Hi and welcome, Ollie here at the Crafty Whisk. I've just received some of the April Mama Elephant new release. I didn't get the whole release, there was a lot in it. This one here is Happy Hedgehog, and I got the coordinating dies, and I also got Little Hedgehog Agenda and their dies, and I've actually labelled them because they were really hard to figure out which hedgehog they belonged to. So that took a little while. This is one of the dies. It's called Diamond Stripes. There's two sorts of stripes. We've got the skinny stripes, which will do the top of a card or the side of a card. And we've also got the wider ones, and these ones have a stitch pattern on them. And the other die I got was Emerald Package. Really, really lovely little die set, this one. You can make tags and frames, all sorts of things. It's really pretty. So these are the cards I'll be showing you today. This one I used the Diamond Stripes and the Happy Hedgehog stamp and die set. This one I again used the Diamond Stripes, but I also used an embossing folder as well, which is from Spellbinders, called Argyle Socks. And I used the Happy Hedgehog again, and this one is a shake card. I used the Little Hedgehog Agenda and one of their older die sets, which is the circular grid. And I just made this one into a little shaker card. And last one, I used the Emerald Package, and I've made it so that it actually forms a frame. And I used Happy Hedgehog stamp and die set with that one. There was a couple more sets in the release, and I will be getting them. I've just got to save up a little bit. So let's get started. So this is the Diamond Stripes die set, and I've cut both out, the skinny ones and the wider ones, and I thought I'd use 3 different shades of pink, so it's sort of like an ombre effect, and I'm just having a little bit of a play to see what I can actually do with these ones. And I thought, just to make life a little bit easier, when I attach them together, rather than gluing them straight down on the card, I thought I would tape them together first. And I'm just using my double-sided score tape. You can use any sort of tape you have with this because you're not going to see it. And I thought this would be easier to place on the card rather than, trying to line up all the little bits of glue and things like that. So this you just pick up as a whole piece, and then you can put it on your card. So I've done that now with, this is the last one, so I've done it to all of them. The ombre effect didn't actually turn out the way I was hoping. I needed to cut out a few more, but I thought for what I was wanting to do, this would be fine. So this is a die set from Reverse Confetti, and it's called Layered Lots of Love. Unfortunately, Reverse Confetti has just recently gone out of business, so you can't get this exact one anymore, but you can use any word die that has a shadow that you have in your stash. You may even be able to find some of the Reverse Confetti stuff hanging around on Amazon if they've still got stock, or other stockists that might have old stock. So I'm just sort of playing around with the triangle patterns to see what sort of look I wanted to go for. And I'm also going to stack a few of the shadow dies from the Lots of Love die together to give it a little bit of height. And I've just done all of them in the same colour, but this is a really great way to use up your scrap bits of paper or cardstock. So you can just do the top one in the colour you want, and the base ones can be in white, whatever other sort of colour you have hanging around. And these letters are big enough for me just to pop a little bit of glue onto them. Otherwise you can cut it out from, if you've got like double-sided tape on the back of the cardstock before you run it through with the die, then you've got an instant sticky background. But this one was big enough to use the glue, so I just went with that. And putting it together is going to be really easy as well, because we've already stuck the triangle pieces together. All we need to do is pop either double-sided tape or glue onto the back of that and remove the backing of the double-sided tape that we already have on there, and then just stick it down where you want it to go. And you don't have to use the triangles in their entirety. You can cut them down a little bit, do whatever you want with them. And I spent way too much time overthinking which ones I was going to use. So I have also used on the white card fronts, I ran it through an embossing folder. One of them is the Spellbinders Argyle socks, which is the one on the right, and the one on the left I used generic company, and I just used their Swiss Dots. The Swiss Dots embossing folder you can get pretty much anywhere. I think I got it free with one of my die cutting machines. And I've already done the little sentiment strip as well. Just trying to sort of cut down on time a little bit so the video isn't too long. And the ink I used around the sentiment, or for the sentiment, sorry, in this one, is from Lawn Fawn, and it's bubblegum. And I've pre-coloured the hedgehogs as well, but I will put down in the description box which colours I used. Sorry for the noise in the background. I've got cats jumping all over the place because they love doing this when I'm doing the voiceovers. Let's just hope they don't step all over the keyboard. So I did use a mix of the glue and the double-sided tape on the back of the triangles because I'm putting it onto quite a heavily embossed piece of cardstock, so I really needed it to stick down really well. And I've just then popped down the sentiment, and I'm just using a nice simple little hedgehog. And I'm just popping him up on some foam dots. These are the ones from Snazzy Scrappin'. Just so he sticks up to be about the same height as the sentiment there. And I'm just going to also pop a teeny weeny little butterfly on his nose. And I'm using a top folding note card, so 11 inches by 4¼ scored at 5½ down the middle. And I've just trimmed the card front down just a little bit so that we have a nice border around the card front. And I also, for the card, didn't actually use white cardstock. I used a cream cardstock, just something I already had in my stash. And I will be using a combination of the score tape and liquid glue, just because it is a heavily embossed piece of cardstock. And when you do the embossing on your cardstock, it's a good idea to just give the card a little bit of a spritz with water before you pop it through your die cutting machine. It just helps the paper's fibres to move into the new shape without cracking. So there you go, that one's done. The embossing looks really, really nice in real life. It's beautiful. It's a real compliment to the triangles. So this one I'm doing onto an embossed background of Swiss dots. And I'm just using the triangles to form a diamond this time. I'm trying to get it nice and straight. I was lining the card front up with the grid lines on my craft mat, just so that my diamond wouldn't sort of go a bit skew-if. And again, I'm just going to pop the little hedgehog up onto some foam dots. This really makes for a very quick and easy card, because it's basically just running your cardstock through with an embossing folder and then die cutting your triangle shapes, and then you've only got like one little critter to colour in. And normally when I do this sort of thing, I colour in quite a lot, so I've got some for standby basically. And with this, I've just popped some of the flowers into the little basket by just cutting a little slit at the top of the basket, so the flowers actually look like they're coming out of the basket. And I'm also going to raise up the sentiment just on some foam tape as well. And the liquid glue I'm using is the Barely Art glue today. And I've just got one more little butterfly just to finish it off. And I'm just going to pop it again onto a top folding note card, 11 inches by 4¼ scored at 5½. And I use the actual scoreboard to fold my card in half so that the edges are all aligned really nicely. And again, just using the combination of score tape and liquid glue. And the good thing by using the combination is you have a little bit of wiggle room when you put the glue on top of the score tape. If you just use a score tape, you've pretty much stuck it down where it's going to end up being. And then I'm just using a little bit of the sparkle glaze, which is the glitter gloss from Aqua Shimmer. And just some sequins as well. They're from Heffy Doodle, from their Pink Fizz sequin mix. Okay, now for this card I'm using the little Hedgehog agenda with their coordinating dies, and I'm hoping I got all the dies correctly, and one of their older dies, which is a circular grid. They have these grid cover dies in lots of different shapes. They're really gorgeous. And I've cut out and pre-coloured all my little hedgehogs, and I'll put the colours in the description box as well. And I'm putting it onto white card, but the cover die is out of that nice creamy colour. And for the acetate, I'll be using the Heffy Doodle acetate. It's a really nice thickness. And basically what I'm doing is I'm just measuring the die cut shape there, and I'm cutting the acetate out to just a fraction smaller. You don't want it much smaller because you've still got to be able to attach it. But I didn't want any of it sticking out on any of the sides of the card. To adhere it, I'm using the red line tape in the 1/4 inch. And I'm just going to pop it onto a bit of paper so that I can actually see where the edge of the acetate is. It was a bit tricky on the craft mat. And you want this along the very edge. And I use the red line tape because it is a really, really strong adhesive. I never use liquid glue when I'm doing shaker cards. I always use foam tape and double-sided tape. The only thing I hate about the red line tapes is the backing always sticks to me. So to eliminate the problem of that, I normally have like a little piece of sticky tape next to me, and I put it onto the sticky bit of the sticky tape so it doesn't stay all over my hands. And then you're attaching that down to the cover panel. And now I'm using some of the anti-static powder that you use when you do embossing. I'm putting that over the acetate to help the sequins glide around. And the double-sided foam tape I'm using is from Heffy Doodle, and it's their 5mm foam tape, and it's got a 3mm loft or height. And this is the perfect thickness because there isn't much room around the edges of the circles here, and the 5mm was just perfect. And this is what gives the height or the gap for all your shaker bits to be able to flow around freely. If you use just normal double-sided tape, the sequins will not sort of go around, they won't like shake around very much at all. They'll just be stuck in between the two layers. So you do need foam tape with a little bit of a loft. And now I'm also using the anti-static powder around the edge of the foam tape. I've still got the backing on it, but I didn't want any of the sequins sticking to the edges of the foam tape. And I'm just popping a mixture of different sort of embellishments in here. I'm popping in the Heffy Doodle Pink Fizz sequin mix, and some 3mm clear drops, which I got from Paper Crafting Australia, but they have also closed down. You can get them from anywhere though. And some little uh, clay hearts, and I just picked them up from Spotlight. And I'm putting a reasonable amount in there so that it does give a really nice shake. And now I'm just taking the corners of the foam tape adhesive off, or backing off, sorry. And that will make it easier for me to be able to line up where my card is going to be going on top. And because I want to have a little bit of wriggle room in case I put it down incorrectly for the first go, I pop a little bit of liquid glue on the exposed adhesive of the foam tape. And because this is rectangle and it's exactly the same size as my card base, I'm popping it into my scoreboard, which has a nice corner. Anything with a corner will do. Then you just peel back the backing paper and it is perfectly in place. And then I like to give it a good test to make sure it shakes nicely as well. And now it's just a matter of choosing where I want my little hedgehogs to go. And I've got a nice mixture of the little hedgehogs all doing different things. Some are reading books. One of them's in a little pot. One's drinking a cup of tea. One's holding little balloons. They're really cute. And I'm putting them sort of offset of the circle so that we actually do get to see the shaker elements behind them. And it looks like they're sort of looking into a window. And I'm just using glue to stick them down. I didn't want any of these popped up at all because the shaker card already has a bit of bulk to it from the foam tape. So these ones I just wanted to be flat on the card. And I'm leaving one little circle free, and that's where I'm going to pop the sentiment on. And I'm going back to the Happy Hedgehog stamp set for this one. And that'll just fit really beautifully in there. And again, I'm using the Lawn Fawn bubblegum. And I'm just using a circle die with stitching on it. These ones are from Art Impressions and it's called Circle Double Stitched, but the majority of companies do sell stitched dies. And I'm just running it through my little Heffy Doodle mini die cutting machine. I love it for little things like this. It's awesome. And that fits just nicely in there, just perfectly. But I wanted to stand out just a little bit, so I'm just going to grab some Altenew butternut ink, and I'm just going to go around the edges with the finger dauber, just so it stands out a little bit from the card, but it's not the focus of the card. And again, I'm just using the liquid glue, and I'll be popping it just underneath the hedgehog that's above so that it centres nicely. And then just for a little finishing touch, I'm just going to glue one of the hearts on top of the sentiment, and this is the heart set that I was using for inside the shaker card, so it all ties in. And there you go, a sweet little shaker card. The last card I'll be making is using the emerald package dies along with the Happy Hedgehog stamp and die set. When you use the frame die, it actually cuts the centre out as well. So you can use them together, you can use them separately, it's up to you. I've used the Heavy Doodle 5mm foam tape to raise the frame up off the card a little bit. And the beauty of this is that it still leaves you with a tiny border around your standard card, which is 5.5 by 4.25. I'm using a top folding note card. And I will be using the inner piece, and just to make it stand out a little bit and give it a bit of depth, I'm using Distress ink in walnut and just going around the edges. Now you can use a different colour here, you don't have to use it at all. I just want it to be tone on tone, but with a little bit of depth. And the sentiment I stamped out with the Lawn Fawn ink, and it was also called Walnut. And I'm going to use liquid glue to adhere this panel, just so that it gives me a little bit of wiggle room in case I don't get it in the correct spot straight away, which I don't. So I was very glad to have used glue. If I had have put the foam tape up to the inner edge, it would have been much easier. And this is my favourite little image. It's the little hedgehog on top of the mushroom. And I'm just going to give him pride of place on the front of the card there in the centre, well, sort of centre. And just to make the little white spots stand out on the mushroom, I'm just going to use the white Sakura gel pen just to make those spots pop a little bit. And I'll also add some accents to the hedgehog and the mushroom as well. I love this little card. It's a toss-up between this one and the shaker as to which one's my favourite. So there you go. And this is the 4 cards that I made from this release. It's not the whole release, as I said, but it is most of it. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe and share, and let me know what you think of the videos. Thank you. See you later.